So here is the Elite 80, and I just picked this up for a friend up the street, so it wasn't very far, but it's carbureted. This looks like it's a 1980s bike, but it really isn't. This is a 2006. Well guys, I'm on board the Honda Elite 80, and I just figured something out about this bike. When I went to get it, the ride was very bouncy, just all over the place. And I was talking to my friend that owns this bike, and he left it with me because I'm going to be changing the tires and doing kind of like a revision on it. But this bike has been barely used, 600 miles. And this is an 80cc. What I like about this scooter is that this is essentially the old version of my Elite 110. The Elite 110, of course, is a fuel-injected, much more modern, much more usable bike. But I love the 80 styling of this. So when I picked this thing up and I rode it home for him, it was bouncy, and he thought he might need like a new rear shock, but it turns out that the tires were completely flat. So they were, both the front and rear were at 10 psi, and you know, they looked hard. You know, like we touched the scooter, I kind of like did like a little bit of a bounce test on it. They looked hard. I think small scooter tires always look like they're not flat. But anyway, I inflated it, and now it's riding much better. Like, it is a much sprightlier ride. The throttle's a little stiff, and I think I just need to oil it. Yeah, it definitely helped getting the pressure up on the tires. It's incredible what a difference that makes. So this bike uses 10-inch wheels, and on my Elite 110 it uses 12-inch wheels. Of course, there is a bump up at displacement. Of course, Honda also had various other Elites. They had the 50, the 80, the 150, the 250. So the Elite brand is very popular. I think the newest one, I think what they wanted was to start in 2010 giving the public here in the United States fuel injected modern versions of the Elites, which was the Elite 110, and it never took off. Right now it seems like that scootering has never been more popular. Scooter riders are just everywhere. Everybody realizes the importance of transportation and not taking public transportation in case you get a virus. So people want to get out and have some personal freedom, and these things are close to free these days. You know what I always tell people about scootering? Like, if I was to be behind this guy on a Super Tenere or whatever, I'd be really frustrated. But on a scooter, it's a different mentality. It's like you're not angry. I think scooters kind of bring a smile to my face because they're very approachable. And the problem with like the bikes nowadays, when people think of bikes and bikers, they just think of douchebags, and you see that so much these days. And I kind of like the idea that if you get a scooter, you're a different type of person. I don't know, maybe more rational. But with all the kind of crap that's going on in the world, a scooter like this brings a smile to a lot of people's face. Having big wheels does matter. The Elite 110 is definitely a lot faster. Of course, this is an 80. The Elite is a 110. But that fuel injection, you start the Elite 110 and it idles like perfectly right from the start. This one is kind of odd. It doesn't have a choke, but you start it and you have to wait like a good minute and a half for it not to die while riding. And if it's colder, I think it's a little bit tougher. The owner was telling me that it is a very cold-blooded bike, but it idles perfectly. It really is a very smooth bike, and of course it's pretty much new. This bike is so relaxing to ride. You know, I just kind of wish it was actually like a 1985, because that would be way cooler than a 2006 that looks like a 1985. Look at this. I just spotted this. I don't want cars to kill me, but there's a snapping turtle, a really big one over there. Whoa, you see that? Oh, I scared her. Going uphill here. Yeah, definitely losing power. But it's not bad. It's a very different mentality to riding. On my whatever, anything that's big, I'm always trying to go faster. I'm always trying to like go through corners. You know, it's more about the science of like cornering but on a scooter, all of that is removed. There's no point of riding fast something like this. It's all about looking around and enjoying the places around you. When it comes to cornering on this bike, it's very nimble. I mean, this bike just corners like crazy. I never really gotten a hang of riding these small wheeled scooters. I think it's because I'm coming from a motorcycle, and when you go from a motorcycle with any sort of like 16-inch wheels, 17, and then you come to a scooter that's got 10 inches, it is very difficult to ride, or at least like wrap your mind around the cornering ability. And it's not even like cornering ability, it's like that they are just so quick at flicking from one side to the other. One of my favorite roads to ride on a scooter, especially if it's nice out and you don't, if it's like warm, you don't need the windscreen. On the SH, you got that windscreen and it is just boiling hot, but the windscreens do help once in a while when it's cold. Alright, let's pull over here and look at this scooter. Look at this. What a nice spot to stop. So guys, let's look around this Elite 80. Sure, it looks like a 1985, but it is quite modern. But it remains mainly unchanged throughout the ages. And it is a cool bike. I really like it, but there are some major flaws right off the bat. The first major flaw is that it's an 80cc, but it's quite slow. I was expecting it to be a little bit peppier, but then again, it is 80. My 110 doesn't go much faster than this, and my 110 is the new version of this Honda. But look at it. It is an 80s looking bike, and I think that's what creates that scooter like appreciation for it. The 80s are kind of coming back, and the 80s, when you look at sport bikes from the 80s, they have terrible brakes, terrible suspension. This one's got terrible suspension, but it's mainly due because of the scooter. And it's completely adequate for the type of riding that people would do scooters or use scooters for. But it's a very typical Honda Elite. There are some really cool Honda Elites that also have flip-up headlights over there. So this one doesn't have it, but it's still pretty darn cool. From the front, you can kind of see the trunk space. It's like one angle. I mean, this angle of the scooter is just like completely flat. And it's got a flat floorboard, so you can put your feet here or you can put your feet there as a cruiser. And look at this. For your passengers, you do have a very similar rear passenger foot peg that you would have on the SH150. It's almost exactly the same. And when you look at design, you see the grille here. This is all looks. It does kind of cool, whatever, but they completely use that throughout the entire bike. This kind of like design, like even here, the scoops on the side, they're fake. Even the rivets here, they're fake. Like over here, over there. So, and in the rear, look at this. Honda just went out with that design throughout the entire bike. So kind of fascinating when you think about that maybe at the time, and I have seen that in Porsche and all of that, so maybe they had somebody looking at Porsches and all of these old cars. Maybe that's a design cue that they had at the time. But look at the headlight and look at the little mini windscreen. This thing does help a little bit deflect some of the wind, but of course it's almost virtually useless. But it does look good. It does give it a nice design. And mirrors, or the turn signals, stick out quite far, and they are integrated. And get this, that is a glass headlight. Normally you would not see a glass headlight on a scooter. At least that's the first time I've seen it. But at that time, glass was being used, I think, up until like, yeah, this is 2006, so glass headlight. Like 1995, I still see cars that use the glass headlights. What this means is that this is not going to fade like the plastic ones. My Elite 110, SH, all have plastic. Everything is plastic headlights. And you do have reflectors down here, which is kind of cool. You have this weird bumper, so when you look down, you see how far it sticks. It's kind of neat. Let's show you the trunk here. You need the key for that. Look at this. Look how badass this is. But unfortunately, you do not have any space here because it kind of folds very flat. So you do have space to put something here, kind of maybe books or something. Maybe this is like a school, like a student sort of scooter, and then you put like your books here, maybe something here. You have your pouch here for your tools. You have some electrics here. Not a lot of storage space at all. But then again, you might say, well, you do have storage in the underseat, right? So let's look at the underseat storage. Put my gloves here. So here we go. Pop this open. And here's the storage. That's right, guys. No storage at all. So, you know, I'm usually a complainer about storage. I like my Elite 110. It's got this huge under-seat storage compartment. This is the fuel tank. That's, I think that's the pump. So that it uses a fuel pump. It's got the battery. You know, this is a little storage for maybe a registration. I got some extra keys. The only aftermarket is this. Plugged into the battery so you can charge it. But yeah, no underseat storage at all. And I'm not really sure I'd be okay with that. So to fill this thing up, of course, you just have the turning. I actually like these more than the ones that they're putting now on bikes. But, and this is kind of neat. They added a little bit of the red plastic here, even though they really didn't need to do that. The seat is kind of flimsy. You know, the problem with this is that this looks comfortable, but after a while it's going to completely hurt your ass. But it's in perfectly good shape. There's no rips, nothing. Normally by this time these bikes would be all ripped up. So kind of insane that it's still in this great of shape. It only has 600 something miles. Looking at the rear here, you have a very nice rack, and it's got a little grab rail for your passenger, and of course you would put like a little storage box. You have a very large brake light, and the brake light kind of looks like a XR650L tail light. Not exactly very appealing. I kind of wish that they did something better with that. So right here you have integrated turn signals, and it makes me think, if you put integrated turn signals, why wouldn't you do the same with the brake light? Wouldn't you want to like integrate the brake light as well? That to me would make a whole lot more sense than doing this. This kind of like sticks out as a bad design flaw. But you know, I'm a complainer, so I do like to kind of point these things out. The more I look at it, the more like I go like, okay, you could have done it a little bit differently. It would look better as a scooter to integrate it into the plastic if you're going to integrate the signals. When you look at the controls, the mirror, so this is the only problem really with age, is this kind of like weird thing that is happening to the mirror. Might be hard to see on video, but it's kind of like this dither or specks in the mirror. They still work, but they are a little bit off there. And then the stock for the mirror is rather large and plasticky. You do have a little mount here, and I think if you remove this, there we go, there's the mount for the The mirror, you can probably put like a GPS mount or phone mount there. It's very flat here. So this control system is very flat. And these kill switches, you don't see these buttons anymore. Look how big that start button is and how square it is. But these kind of buttons do go with the flow of the squareness of the entire bike. The Speedo, it has a fuel gauge. It's got your speedometer, odometer, no trip. It does have a light for engine oil change, turn signals, high beam. Get this, I've never seen a high beam indicator that you move up and down like this. So that's kind of an odd thing. Usually it's it's a toggle, but that one's a little bit different. Turn signal, same system. Horn in yellow. Very simple system. The brakes are actually fairly good on this. It does use front and rear drum brakes, so nothing spectacular about it, but you might think, oh, I need better braking, but it actually brakes fairly fine for something of this size. The tires on this are 10 inches, so that's the same size as the Buddy 125, which are 10s. I prefer a little bit bigger. Vespas, I believe, are 12s. I think I've seen aftermarket Vespa tires that are 13s. The bigger the tire, the better it handles, or at least it handles more like a motorcycle. This thing handles like a very small scooter, which is what people would get this for. It is fun. The little tiny tires are fun on this thing. And no kickstand. It does have a center stand. You know, one of the problems I find in mostly the very light scooters is when you remove it off the center stand, I try to like push it and then the whole center stand kind of moves along with it. Oh, another thing that I should mention, it does have a handbrake. So that's that little lever here. You just gotta push it in and you brake it. So in case you park on a hill, you're not gonna be flying down. But very simple bike, but I really like the looks. It's a very retro bike. I think if guys were to get this, it would look like they're major hipsters. So it's a very quiet bike. It idles really well. It's fun to ride. You get a lot of looks from people because they haven't seen one of these since the 80s, most likely. Yeah, let's start this bad boy and get out of here. This thing just starts right up. Everything works on it. Tail light, it's clean. It is very efficient. The tires are very thin. I think that would be my only recommendation for this bike, is that you want to be able to maybe get some thicker tires. You don't have to get ruckus style tires, but it does help having something a little bit bigger because it helps absorb a lot of the imperfections of the road. Welcome to Montgomery County. Like, I feel like I'm in a movie, like an 80s movie riding this thing, like Mannequin or Weekend at Bernie's. I'm like carrying Bernie with me. Well, here's a little problem. This mirror, it's moving. It's in a weird kind of direction, but I think I just have to tighten this bolt. Well, squids, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and stay safe out there. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening. Don't become a stat, please. All right, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Candygram for Mongo. Candygram for Mongo.
Hey, Mongo.
Sign, please. Thank you.
Kind of stuck here. The cops won't bother me.